Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from. We're here today with George Bardissi from bvoip. Hey, George, how's your day going?
It's an interesting day so far, Scott. I gotta admit, but you know what? I better rather that than be bored because I don't like being bored. And in technology land, let's face it, bored is good. Bored is good.
Well, if you're bored, that means nothing. The poop hasn't hit the fan for the day. Then,
Well, I mean, it would be great if everything just ran and then people just paid you for that. But we all know that that's the exception to the rule sometimes.
that's right. That's right. Hey, it's got to fall on somebody. It might as well fall on the owner.
Well,
So,
I always say they always say, right, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, it's like just wait till it's broke, and then you're gonna pay me to fix it, right? Does that work?
that's right. That's right. Well, we were just having a good chat just a minute ago before we went live, talking about all kind of shows, and I didn't realize you were a big TV buff like me. I've gotten 3 good shows now, so thank you for that. I have some. When I'm not scrolling through TikTok on my phone, I've got some shows
I
that I
just
can
never
dive
I never
into.
pegged you for a TikTok guy, Scott. I'm gonna be honest.
Oh, I won't make the videos. I can't come up with TikTok content. I mean, it would be very boring. So, but I do like scrolling through TikTok. So I won't lie. I don't know,
Okay. All right.
but I'll blame it on my wife. She's 10 years younger than me, so she just gets it. I don't know. She's
She's just
down with
into
it.
the TikTok universe, man.
I don't know.
Maybe she's the one posting stuff on there.
I don't know. There's a lot of. Have you seen some people in the channel with TikToks? I mean, there. I've
I
seen
have
some.
seen a few. I'm not gonna lie, and they're interesting. Very interesting.
They are. But how do you take IT and I mean, I don't know. I'm
Computer.
sure you can do it,
Let's face it, right? If people really like all these reality TV shows, and a lot of them are scripted now, by the way.
right?
Could you imagine if, like, as an IT person, you like actually like videoed what you did on a day-to-day basis? Like all those crazy stories that people talk about. It's like, oh yeah, my CD-ROM drive's broken. Oh, you mean the cup holder? The cup holder's broken. And I'm like, what? Huh? No, that's not meant for your freaking coffee cup.
That's
So
right.
I'm sure there's a lot of stories like, oh, I can't. The computer doesn't turn on. Did you press on the power button? Well, it doesn't work. Okay, ever see that show IT Crowd? It's a UK show. It's on
Oh, I
Netflix, I
love
think.
that show.
So funny, right? Did you try
Yeah.
turning it off and on again? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Click.
That's one I forgot the name of. I was looking for memes for it the other day. I'm going to write that down because totally IT crowd is so accurate
Hey,
and,
but like
and comical.
the funny part, like that's the thing. It's so accurate. It's like, oh, you gotta use your mouse to and then it's like this
Yep.
on this. It's like, dude, what do you like? This stuff was real, right? Anyway, I digress. I
Or
mean,
when
but
you tell people to turn the computer off and on again and they hit the power button on the monitor.
yeah, yeah.
It
I mean, and
happens.
listen, I mean, it really could be its own reality TV show. I'm surprised nobody's tried to pull it off already. Maybe we have to do it because apparently, like, I really think it would be funny. I do.
Well, I sometimes I put post in the group. I've done it once or twice. I think I'm going to do it again, especially after we're talking about it now. What is the craziest ticket you logged this week in your IT business?
Right?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that. That would be. It really brings up some interesting topics of conversation. So I don't know, pretty interesting.
I
But
mean, I'm sure there's going to be some really frustrating ones in there if you actually get some responses, right? It's like, how many times did somebody call in and ask you to change your password because they don't know how to switch a user on their computer and they think their password's not working, like every day?
yeah,
Oof.
all the time happens. So, what are some crazy tickets that you see at bvoip with end users using bvoip? Do you see any weird things about phones and tickets?
Well,
And
listen, our partners usually field the questions from their customers because, like, they're gonna call them anyway. We talked about this way back when we did the last one of these, right? Like, hey, if you call the 800 number for pickyournamevoip.com, I mean, you can have your end user try and call, and then when, like, the person on the other end of the line's like, oh, did you try this? Did you try that? And then all of a sudden the network blows up because they unplugged something they shouldn't. Like, that stuff happens all the time. But, like, some weird ones definitely kind of sneak through. Like, somebody went to get like an aftermarket, like cord for the receiver, right? And like, like the old
Gotcha.
school kitchen cord that's like 30 feet long. You remember these, right? The ones
Oh,
and then you're like, all of a sudden, like the phone doesn't work, and it's like, oh, like which jack on the phone did you plug that cord into? And then like they plug it into the wrong one. And you're like, I don't know how you did that, but like switch that and see if it works. Oh yeah, it works out. Oh, okay. Like
now are
that
you
kind of stuff
talking about
happened.
the cord that had a pigtail curl and you used to have to hold it to unwind it? Like let
Yes.
it just sit there and spin?
Yes. Like little stuff like that happens all the time. Like, hey, like, oh, my phone's not working. It's like, okay, is it plugged in? Like just like your computer's like, is it plugged in? Well, no, it's not. Oh, plug it in, see if it works.
See what
Oh, it's working
happens.
now. Stuff like that. Yeah, I don't want to trivialize it, but like sometimes those ones do come through. And
So
unfortunately,
half the time with tickets, the best fix is turning it off and on again. Does that happen a lot with the tickets or for phones as well? Like VoIP support?
I'm going to flip it around and say that sometimes, and this is not just specific to VoIP, but just general IT MSP land, sometimes you just should pick up the phone and have a conversation, and a 2-minute conversation solved a day of back and forth emailing through the ticketing system. And like, then you turn into me, right? There's no hair. You're like, why did we do this? And you're just like, just hello? Yeah. Can you try this? Isn't this? Oh yeah, it's good now. Like that 1-2-minute conversation could save hours of just trying to decipher people are bad at, like, emails are just sometimes a bad chat text, right? We talk about it all. Sometimes it's just a bad way to communicate because like you can't really get the context sometimes of what people are saying. And like I was actually just talking to a couple people about this, right? Like, like everybody always talks about the balance, right, of how they field service requests, right? Like, hey, like we really don't want a lot of phone calls. We want everybody to put in an email or a ticket or a chat, an SMS, all
Sure.
trendy now, right? And it's like, could you imagine that sometimes people have tried to eliminate phone altogether, right? Hey, I'm just going to do everything by chat or by email. I don't think that's good. I just haven't seen it done successfully. I think there's a balance, right? Like whether you're going into some website to log a ticket or you're picking up the phone, I'm sure severity has something to do with it, or,
Sure.
like perception of whether they have a really big problem or not. But like, there's a place for everything, right? And I believe, I would love to hear your opinion, Scott, but I believe that it's like 50-50, right? 50% of the tickets coming in, the service requests coming in are going to be digital in some format. I don't pick them.
Okay.
I don't
Like
email,
an
chat,
automated,
text.
yeah.
And then the other 50% is going to be by phone. Like people, could you imagine if every time you had to talk to, I don't know, your cable company, your credit card company, all these people, and like you couldn't get a hold of someone, like you're going to like throw the phone against the wall, man. Like you're going to start punching your computer screen because you can't get a hold of someone.
That's right.
I think the point is to be more efficient when you're on the phone rather than just take, like everything with its is correct kind of quantity, right? Too much of a good thing can turn into a bad thing kind of thing. Like, hey, we want to make sure when people call, they're calling for the right reason. We want to make sure when people are chatting in or emailing in or going through a portal or whatever, or SMS, right? That's like the new trendy, thing now. Hey, I just got to go back and forth via SMS. And it's like, 200 text messages later, it could have been a 5-minute call. Like, I think that's
I totally get that. We onboarded a new client not long ago, a couple months ago, and they my point of contact for the client is always reaching out to us, and we have a tech, not me as well as another tech, that is more than willing to help anytime. But sometimes I wish they would just pick up the phone and call, because we'll go through, like, I swear, an hour of text messages just that I could have asked her one simple question, and she could have replied, and we'd been off of it 5 minutes into it versus an hour just to find out via text. Sometimes I'll just say, too much to text, I'm going to call you.
It's
Yeah.
true.
I mean,
It's
my
true.
fingers, I don't want to type it. I mean, I could talk a lot, George. I don't want to put it all on text.
And here's the thing, right? Like, so when those calls happen, right? Like
Mhm.
you shouldn't hide from them, right? We talked about,
Right.
okay, have you ever seen a successful, IT shop completely digital, no phone calls? I don't.
Right.
I have a couple of times. I don't suggest it. I think it's almost impossible to actually make work. Okay, so
Sure.
that means the phone's in there, right? And part of the problem, Scott, is that like for a long time people said, hey, if it's not, and it's not, they're not wrong, right? If it's not in the system, it didn't happen.
Right.
And you're like, well, then what happens is that you're relying on human beings to enter their notes, right? And like this is part of the challenge, right? Especially when maybe you're on the road and you have to take that call because you're the only one that can answer it. And then all of a sudden you forget that that call happened, and then it never happened. It never got documented. And then, things go awry from there, right? Or especially now in remote time, right? Like,
Yep.
all right, so now all these people are working from everywhere on the planet, but like, how do you know what the last person dealt with? And there's a little bit of human being involved, right, to make sure you get everything in the system. And like all these tools kind of came out of nowhere to try and help with that, but like when it comes to the phone stuff, it kind of got neglected. It's actually one of the things we tried to solve when we started bvoip. So like bvoip started out of our own MSP who like really felt like, hey, number one, we really needed to standardize on something, to offer our customers, right? So that we didn't get a lot of this and like running after our tails, trying to figure out how to
Sure.
fix every phone system on the planet. And then like number two, and by the way, try to make that profitable, right? Because like it really wasn't.
Right.
And then number two, it was like, how come like we made all this investment in all this technology, all these tools, documentation system, PSA, RMM, remote access, all this stuff, but like they're all separated, right? And like, well, how come that connection was never really made? And like that's kind of why when when bvoip came to be, right, we were just like, this is a major thing that like nobody spent time to fix. I don't know why. Some of the newer systems and tools out there, right, kind of have a little bit more baked into it, but it's still not really there the way it should.
They're
And like,
not
how do we
focused on
like bridge that gap?
MSPs, or I
Well,
even not just MSPs, IT business owners. They're not focused on the IT industry. They're kind of like we do it all. Where bvoip, and I feel like I can say this because we are bvoip partners. Bvoip is geared towards the IT professional. Whether you're an MSP, whether you own a break fix shop, doesn't matter what you do. If you're an IT business owner, check out bvoip. So we've been
yeah.
very
So
happy.
I'm going to show you some things, right, that kind of like
Okay.
spell this out a little bit more. But in general, right, big picture, what do we try to solve for, right? So you have your PSA, your ticketing system. Maybe you have a different CRM. Sometimes the ticketing system and the PSA isn't a good marketing and sales tool, right? So like for example, here at bvoip, we use HubSpot and ConnectWise, right?
Okay.
HubSpot's more of a marketing sales tool, and then ConnectWise more of a service, and support tool, right? And everybody has some different combination of things, right? It's
Sure.
not unusual. So like, all right, so we have a separate documentation tool. We have a second RMM tool. We have a separate remote access tool. We have, like, oh, by the way, we need to be able to tie this data together somehow so that we can bring our phone calls into our other stuff so that we can like see it all together. Oh, and by the way, it'd be nice to make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to do when they're on the clock. Oh, and by the way, it'd be nice to prove to the customers that like they're actually getting the support they need, because sometimes, the check signer doesn't really understand what's happening, underneath
That's
him
right.
or her. Oh, and then by the way, like sometimes it's a nice CYA, right? Instead of a he said, she said, right? Like we have those calls. We know what happened. Like it's right there in the system, and I can pull that call down and say, hey, Mr. Customer, just listen to this call and tell me, does it make sense to you? Or, before we start going back and forth, so like there's a lot of things that are like unchecked for, right? And so we came in and said, hey, there's a way to kind of pull all these pieces together and really get something different out of it, right? It's not just about making the phone ring. It's about what happens during the call, right? So that you can, really get that glued together with your other tools, right? And so that's kind of sort of what we're going to talk about for the rest of our time today, right?
All right.
So, just I know Scott introduced me, but and I'm not a PowerPoint guy. I'm going to show you things, but My name's George Bardisi. I'm founder and CEO here over at bvoip. Here's my contact information. Feel free to reach out. I'll have a little web form you can fill out too at the end for all the guys and gals here in ITBOG land. But effectively, let me show you. Let's start from here, right? Let's start from all of the tools people use in IT land to run their businesses, right? So here's a list of a lot of the IT-centric tools that we've built integration to within our what we call our OneStream platform, right? So that you can begin to like wrap all of your tools or a lot of your tools together with your phone system, right? So like, for example, Scott, you're a Synchro guy, right?
Yeah, we use Synchro.
So now, so obviously I can, merge the phone system experience with Synchro so that as calls come in, for example, we can match calls up with contacts, companies, tickets, yep. Right? And then now you can start tracking that appropriately with the rest of the stuff in your system. And now all of a sudden we have something that we didn't have before, right? So obviously,
yeah, you didn't get that integration with Ring Central for sure.
Yeah. Well, again, like you said, Ring Central's thinking broad. They're not concentrating in IT MSP land for whatever reason. No problem. Our gain, their loss, right?
Yep.
So in a nutshell, right, what our OneStream platform does is it merges your, workflow, your tools, and your reporting, and we'll talk a little bit about alerting all into one big picture. Okay. So for example, right, this is an example of one of the presentations of our OneStream app, right? So I'll just kind of full screen this, give you an idea. Imagine at the lowest level when a phone call comes into your company, if you don't have anything else, right, and you just have a phone number calling you, right, caller ID, I want to go into your CRM, your PSA, your ticketing system and say, hey, here's every contact that I found that matches that number. Who is the person actually contacting you, right? So I'm gonna be like, oh, this is a main number. It's really George, right? And so I'm gonna pull up George and I'm gonna see, does George have any tickets? No, all his tickets are closed. I can open up old tickets to see, hey, what is George calling about, right? Maybe it's an old ticket that said, hey, I had an issue last week. You guys solved it for me, but it really came back, right? My password isn't working. Can you reset it again? I can go back and reopen a ticket, right? And like continue to work on it. And see,
all from the OneStream client, not the PSA.
I haven't even gotten to the PSA yet, right? Right.
Gotcha.
Or I could say, you know what, Mr. Customer, no problem. Is this a new issue? Oh, okay. You need to reset your password again, or for the first time you're calling in. No problem. Let me go ahead and say, and by the way, I may want to add your account manager, right, to say, hey, maybe George needs training, right, on passwords. So I'm going to tag another colleague, right? And then I'm also going to make sure that I follow up with this person in a couple of days to make sure, that everything's okay. And then I have this quick note here that just says, hey, thanks. I'm glad to hear everything's working now, right? And then when I hit add, it's going to immediately create that ticket for me. So I created this on a ticket board that doesn't exist. So I'm going to just change this real quick and just drop it onto another one. But basically, I'm creating a ticket. I'm sending a email to my colleague about the ticket. I'm reminding myself to follow up on that ticket. The time entry or the activity or both in my PSA was created on that call, right? So it said, hey, a call happened. Here is the start time, end time of the call for billing purposes if you want to bill for it. And the email went to my customer saying, hey, thanks. I'm glad everything's working now. And if the call was recorded, it got uploaded to the ticket.
Awesome. I love that. That's my favorite part, by the way.
And I just did all of that in what? 30 seconds, right? I didn't even get to the PSA yet. Now you can absolutely do so, right? If I want to jump into the PSA, I can click on this little, button here, and it's going to drill me down directly into the PSA, right? So I'm in ConnectWise. I'm going to log in, right? Hopefully I'm already logged in. It's going to ask me to do my multi-factor, right? And my my MFA, hopefully, or single sign-on, right? And then go all the way down, and like the amount of time it took maybe to even get to there, right? I already did the work, right? So you can kind of get the idea, right, of what's going on. When a call comes in, I want to see quickly, who am I talking to? What could they be calling about? And can I quickly get the information into the system? Now, I can see old tickets. I can override ticket statuses, right? And like say, hey, I'm actually working on this, right? So let me go back to, new or whatever, right? Change the status really quick, right? But imagine, Scott, you're a business where the person answering calls for your company is like a non-technical person, right? Could be a dispatcher or
Sure.
somebody who's literally just creating a ticket and then sending it to your team, right? I can create a ticket, right? Not very hard, what I just showed you, right? And I can go ahead and then begin to transfer that call to another person or another service call queue within the phone system, right? I can do what they call a blind transfer, meaning it's going to go to somebody, whoever answers wins, or it's going to be a warm transfer where I'm going to say, hey, I got George on the other end of the line. Yeah, he can't figure out why his password's not working. I'm going to transfer him over. Just hold on the line, right? And then hang up.
Let's transfer him to Alex Stanners.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to send him over there and be like, hey, figure out what's going on, right? And blind transfer. And he's like, why is this guy calling? So like we call that smart call transfer, right? Because what'll happen is when that call gets transferred, this ticket will pop up on the screen.
Okay.
I know exactly where they're at. I can pick right back up, and I really don't have to go digging for information. Now, other things that we can do here is, let's say you have a ticketing system, an RMM system, a remote access system, a documentation tool, and there's a lot out there, stuff like that, right? I can screen pop any set of tools, right? Not just one page, multiple pages. Like I could screen pop a tab for your RMM to that company. I can screen pop a tab for your documentation to that company within their system. I can screen pop the remote access tool, so it just shows your computers that you want a remote access from. Like I can actually bring all your tools forward based on who you're talking to.
Very good.
So like it saves time, right? Because you're not having to figure out who you're dealing with. Now, one part that I skipped that I think is kind of important. When a call comes in and like it's not in your system, and by the way, we see a lot of this, right? Nobody spent the time to go and pull all those phone numbers and assign them to contacts within the the CRM, right, or the PSA. The system's going to search every system, every database that it has access to. If it doesn't find it, you're like, well, this is really a number for George. I just never saved it in the system. I'm going to go ahead and do that now. See how easy it is. I did a search, and then I said, hey, do you want to save this as the office number or the mobile number for this contact? And then immediately pushes that into your tools. Now, if for some reason that contact doesn't exist, I can go back here and create a new contact, right? It's going to have me search for a company, right? And now notice if I have multiple tools, right? Multiple CRM style tools, PSAs, whatever, I can select multiple companies and multiple systems and create that contact simultaneously. Create that company simultaneously.
Okay.
Add the phone number to that person simultaneously without having to jump in between multiple screens. So the first step is a little bit of housekeeping. Once I know who I am, who's calling in, the next time they call in, once I get all that in the system, you're not going to have to go through this, right? The idea is to identify who you're talking to, right? So if there's a one-to-one match, Scott, right? And somebody's calling in, right? And it goes, maybe it's their mobile number and it goes straight to them, right? You're going to know exactly it's going to go straight to them, right? And you're going to be like, oh, are you calling in about this so-and-so ticket number? No problem. Let's say they have a ticket number. You can type it in here. Let's say they have a subject within a print. Let's say they're having a printer issue. You could type in a word that could be in the subject of a ticket. You can also filter between ticket statuses in order to find out what's going on. And the idea is fast. I want to do things fast. I want to take the first part of that phone call and like reduce it down, right? And so that's kind of sort of what's happening here, right? Adjusting existing tickets, creating new tickets. You can actually add notes, right? So you can have, depending on what the notes are assigned to your system, you can create different notes and activities. And then if you also could create an opportunity, right? If you're sales driven, right? So, keep in mind here, this is very, help desk driven, right? So we want people to understand that. Now, you'll notice here, I mentioned earlier, Scott, let's say I'm taking calls on the road, right? Or let's say a call got transferred to me and I'm just not in front of a computer at the moment. I can go backwards in time, tag that call, and it'll put it in as if I entered it at the time the call occurred, right? So I can go in here. I know this call was George from bvoip. Okay. I'm going to select that contact and associate that call with that contact, right? I'm going to immediately go in and say, you know what? This was about a new ticket. So I'm going to create a new ticket and say, George needs a new monitor cable. Okay. I'm going to put this in here under my sales team. I'm going to say, hey, I need somebody to do something about it. And I'm going to say, at Alex, since you picked on him earlier, talked to George and need to order a new monitor. Hopefully it's not back ordered. Right? And I hit add, and it's just going to go and do all my work for me, right? It's going to create my ticket. It's going to add it to my service ticket board. It's going to assign it to, whoever I just mentioned. It's going to send him an email. It's going to add it into the discussion note of the ticket. And my time entry notice is going to be back from the date and the time that it happened.
Okay.
So I'm going to be able to retro those things to make sure that they get in. Because if they weren't in the system, then guess what? They didn't happen. Right? So all of these things just happen. And if there's a call recording, that's going to attach to the ticket too.
Very nice.
So that's some shortcuts to what we do here in bvoip Land, right? Now, let me go a step further, right? We give you access to this back-end portal. This is one of a couple of different views that we have, right? And so we want you to be able to actually get some reporting visibility that you may not be able to get. It's not just about phone system reporting. It's also about phone system and ticketing and call recordings all pulling together at once. We can even pull in your Teams calls. We can even pull in your Zoom calls, or we can pull in your regular calls and kind of aggregate all of that data into one place. And then, by the way, all of that data is drill downable, right? It's actionable. I can see who did what, who talked to who. I can go in here and make sure that calls are actually being tracked against tickets, right? So in this case, a handful of calls got tracked against tickets. What about the rest, right? I'm going to go back and say, hey, don't forget to add these, right? I'm going to be able to listen to those call recordings right here within the portal. I'm going to be able to view those tickets in my reports, right, and see what's going on. And then I can also pod out, excuse me, my people, right? So if I only want to see support calls, I can say, here are the people that I want to add to this group and just see calls about support. And then I can even retro, right? Show me the last 30 days. Do you know that you have a specific peak time in your business where you get calls, you don't get calls? You probably have never seen that laid out that way, right?
Yeah, you can see it here clearly.
Absolutely. Or, hey, across these 4 people, who is everybody doing they're holding their weight? Like, this guy only has 8 hours of calls in the last 30 days, but look at everybody else.
Right.
So you can begin to start to see trends, right? And see what's going on. What if a customer said, hey, we keep on calling you, we just can't get a hold of you, and like nobody's helping us, right? What if I went in and said, let me go in and add a report, for that customer, right? And I'm like, all right, let me do the last 30 days, right? And I'm going to be able to aggregate that data for the last 30 days for that customer and say, here's every single call that you made to our company, whether it was answered, whether it wasn't answered, whether it was abandoned, whether you sat on hold for too long. And we're going to be able to show you all of that data, right, in our report. And you know what? If you want to see all this kind of stuff, I'll have it emailed to you on a schedule. Like, you don't have to believe me, right?
Wow. So you can have the report automatically just generated and sent out.
Yep. I can add it to a schedule. I can say, send report to Scott. All right. And just say, you know what, Scott, you're going to see what I see. I'm going to send this to you, every Monday and Friday. And I'm going to send you the report. And, I'll just say, I'm going to send you one day at a time, or maybe it's the week, right? Week to date, right? And just send you the copy of this report so you get it automatically.
Or once a quarter. Could be like your quarterly. You could use it with your quarterly business review.
Could be. Let me go a step further, right? Because I think this is kind of important, Scott. What if you already use a dashboarding tool like a Power BI or a BrightGauge or something like that? I can have you export that data and pull it into your dashboarding tool. So you already have your ticketing data in there. You already have your RMM data in there, or whatever else you're pulling in. Now you can pull your phone data in there and begin to start making the data make sense to you in that tool. Okay. So like I'm giving you a lot of access that you otherwise would have had to kind of glue things together that aren't easy to do. Okay. And so information's king, right? We said there's three things we want to solve for, right? Workflow. We want to make it faster, easier, right?
That's right.
Visibility of your team. Okay. And then customer satisfaction, right? If we take those three things and we glue them together, we solve for areas that are kind of forgotten areas through all the tools. Okay. At the end of the day, you're still going to pick up the phone about half the time, right? So for every 10 tickets, 10 service related issues that come in, 5 are going to be by phone. You need to track for those things, right? So some other things that are kind of worth mentioning, right? What if a call comes in and I would prompt a person if the issue that they're calling in about is a new issue or an existing issue? Okay. Press 1, press 2. Very simple, not very complicated. If it's an existing issue, what if I told you if they type in the ticket number that they're calling in about, our system will go into the PSA, find the last resource that worked on that ticket, and try and transfer the call to that person directly.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Right? So
they can truly pick up where they left off.
Exactly right. So within our system, we have the ability to do what we call ticket lookup, right? So you can actually have the system say, hey, whenever calls come in, I want to prompt as many times as possible to take my calls, look into the PSA, and find out who is assigned to the ticket. Now, if you're like, hey, I just want the call to be answered, I don't have time to go back, so they could be busy, right? You could say, hey, route the calls to a call queue or a service that or a dispatcher or something like that, so that the call, when it comes in, will screen pop the ticket, but it may not be it may be whoever's available, right?
Sure.
So you have the option to decide what happens. And you also have the option to decide what happens if they enter a valid ticket number or an invalid ticket number, right? What if somebody fat fingered a ticket? You get to give them an option to retype it back in. But if they still don't have their ticket number, maybe you want to route them to somebody to help them figure out what are they calling about first before they actually, talk to an engineer or tech, right?
Sure, sure.
So those are things. The other thing we can do, Scott, and this kind of has more of a security focus, right? What if you could assign a PIN number, almost like an ATM PIN number, within the PSA for each contact, right? And then as they call in, the system's going to prompt them for a PIN number before they talk to a human being, because we're going to validate who they are. The second they type in their PIN number, we know what company they're from, we know who they are, and we know if they're assigned to a specific group of people, like a pod, within the service desk, it's going to route that call to a specific place based on that PIN.
Very
so
good.
You can do PIN code based routing. You can also do caller ID or phone number based routing as well, right? And you can get fancy with that. So we call that targeted call routing. I think it's super important. It's part of what we call one stream here at bvoip. Let me go a step further, right? I think this one's cool. How have you handled historically on-call routing, Scott? Seems to be a pet peeve for a lot of people. Answering services still well, I feel.
No, I mean, I've just always had to pick up the phone and answer it.
But at some people, at some place, people take turns, right? You're going to want to escalate, right? Kind of like what you do with the answering service.
Yep.
So what if I told you that we, within our app, have something called Signal? And what Signal does is it gives you the ability to do 3 separate things, okay? The first thing is to create an on-call support schedule. I'm going to monitor a voicemail box. When people leave messages in that mailbox, I'm going to say, based on a schedule, I'm going to call, text, or email people in whatever priority that I put them in, right? So I could add George, I could add Alec, I could add Michelle, I could just keep on stacking, right? And literally have the system go one by one and then keep going through it until somebody acknowledges, right? Like either reply back to the text. You press 1 if you answer the call and you listen to the message, you press 1 saying I got it. Or you reply back to the email, right? And just like basically tell the system, yeah, I'm awake and I got the message.
There you go.
So that's something that's built into the system. Now you can use this during hours, after hours. A lot of people like to use it for after hours. Excuse me. You can also do it for during hours, right? Especially if you give people an option when they call in, if they're calling in about something critical, right? You can obviously use that in the middle of the day, right? To make sure that those messages get escalated more than others, right? So that's the
Gotcha.
first thing that's the first thing Signal does. The second thing that Signal does is it can log people into or out of a queue based on a schedule, right? So if I wanted to say, I really don't want George to remember to log into the phone system to take calls, I'm going to automatically put his shift in here, and I'm going to put in, hey, George tech support, right? And I'm going to find George, right? And I'm going to, say that I'm going to log George into this queue based on, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday schedule. And I'm going to do that from 8 o'clock to 6 o'clock, whatever, right?
Let's give George Friday off.
Fine. George has Friday off. All right.
All right.
So now the system's going to automatically log George into that queue at the start time, and log him out of the queue at the end time on Monday through Thursday. Okay. That way it's not, oh, sorry, I forgot to log in. Right? Just going to automatically put him in, start having him take calls, right? So let me make this as inactive, or else, I'm going to start getting all these calls. And then lastly, what Signal does, right, is it allows you to automatically log people out of a call queue if they've missed too many calls. So imagine I'm supposed to be there, right? I'm missing calls. What's the threshold of calls where it's too many calls to miss? Right? So you can say, hey, the threshold is 8 calls. If they missed 8 calls, they're probably not at their computer. I'm going to log them out after 8. I'm going to send the notification to their manager. Okay.
Okay.
You can log back in once you track them down. I totally forgot. I thought I was off today.
Pretty high threshold, 8. I'd cut it down to 3.
All right. So 3 is your number. After 3, like, hey, where are you? Are you in the bathroom too long? What's going on?
Maybe after 1 or 2, but yeah. I don't have the tolerance for 8.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I mean, everybody's in a different place, right?
That's right.
So that's also a cool feature. Or how about, let's say you're answering calls for a lot of different, depending on how you structure your IT services business. Maybe you have different business units, right? Okay. Maybe you have your audiovisual department is different from your IT department, is different from your like maybe you're doing break fix versus managed services, right? And you have like different numbers that people call in, and you
different
want
types of clients.
People, you want your people to like answer the phone differently, right? So I'm going to go down here to what we call inbound call scripts, right? And we're going to now set up so that, so we're going to say, thanks for calling George's audio video, right? I can effectively screen pop the script that you want your users to follow when they answer a call. Okay? That way, as your different departments are calling in, you're answering the phone and you're having a reproducible, hey, thanks for calling George's audio video, home of the best deal in town. George speaking, how can I help you, right? Like you can have that uniform across your calls as people call in.
As long as the people can read.
Well, I would hope that that's something that you actually qualify people for during the interviewing process.
During the hiring process, exactly right.
That would be super important, right? Or let me show you a different view of this app, right?
Okay.
Imagine if, like, same thing on the reverse, Scott. Let's say I'm calling outbound and I want to change my outbound caller ID depending on which business unit I'm calling in from. You can do a drop down in the app and then effectively, say, hey, I want to call out from this caller ID during this call versus this caller ID in this call. And that way you can select that at the end user level. Okay. So like a lot of flexibility here, right? In what the app does, right? And then like, going back to, well, we give you this app in different forms, right? So I have a standalone version of this app. I have a Teams version of this app. Okay. So if you're having Microsoft Teams shop, right, you can embed this right within Microsoft Teams. Or I have what we call this side-by-side dual, right? Or on the right-hand side, I'm giving you your soft phone, right? And then on the left-hand side, I'm giving you your integration screen, okay? So I can kind of like make this fit what you do best.
Gotcha.
Okay? So the idea here is that as calls come in, I want to track every single call as much as possible. I want to attach that to a system somewhere. I want to be able to quickly attach it to, is it a activity? Is it a note? Is it a ticket? Is it an opportunity? I want to track my notes and I want to make sure that they're there so that the next person that comes behind me, even if it's just yourself, right? You can go back and remind yourself, hey, this is what happened on this call, or track your time or whatever, right?
Makes sense.
And this is an example of when a call is totally in the system, right? So you see George, you see his call recording was uploaded, you see his contact was associated with this, and you see his ticket was associated with this. And now like that's a completed entry. So what do you think there, Scott? You think there's some value here?
I think there's a ton of value. And I think that I've been using your platform for a while and I'm not even using half of these features. So I'm going to go back and watch this live stream. Luckily, it's recorded. We always upload them to our YouTube channel. And I'm going to start making use of some of these awesome assets that are available to bvoip partners. So
100%. And like, here's the thing, right? Like there's differing levels of what OneStream does. Some are for like upgradable things that we charge extra for. Some we just give you, right? And I just kind of scratched the surface in today's session. But the idea is that we want to smartly handle phone calls, both inbound and outbound calls. We want to track them against your tools so that you're a little bit more efficient. We want to use the system to route calls intelligently so we get people to where they need to go faster and better. And then we want to report off of those calls to make sure like everybody's doing what they need to do. And then, by the way, we can use that as a CYA too with your customer.
Yep.
You know, who sometimes does this, right? Hey, no, you guys aren't doing the
right.
job. No, we're definitely doing the job. You call every day. We answer every time.
That's
now, like
right.
George calls in a lot because he can't remember his password. I think we need to talk to George. But hey, we always took George's call. We always helped him out. But like he really shouldn't have to call every day to remember how to use his password.
That's right.
Should change it to something like cheesesteak. or maybe Chick-fil-A 0001. I don't know, something like that.
You mean George can't handle that 18 character randomly generated password?
Yeah, I know you're a big LastPass guy, and like that's cool, right?
I just like randomly generated passwords because I don't remember any passwords.
Yeah, I get you. Well, we have MFA and single sign-on built into our system too, right? So like for me, it's like if we can make that process easier, right? Security, but also, you know, can we somehow make it reasonable, right? I think that there's a lot of, I think, from a telephony side, right? Like we have the same challenges as everyone else, right?
Yep.
Just like Microsoft's been enforcing multi-factor now. We had to do similar things in phone land in order to make sure that we're, keeping up with the industry kind of like best practices. But I mean, at the end of the day, right? Like, I think it just comes down to, are your tools helping you or are they just there, right? We said, hey, am I just making the phone ring or am I actually automating something for you? So depending on the size of your shop, right? You could, if you're smaller, right, it may be like, hey, some of this stuff may help me. If you're larger, I think a lot more, right? Because you need the visibility that, I think a lot of systems lack a little bit, right? And you need the ability to tie your tools in so that you can actually do more with your systems, right? I even had one, Scott, the other day, a little bit larger of an MSP, and his complaint was that when calls come in and they leave a voicemail, that when the voicemail to email sends it to their, support at georgesit.com, sure, it just goes into the ticketing system as like a catch-all, right? A generic, because like how the ticketing system can't figure out, well,
it's
who's
not
that
mapping
from, and then, so like I was like, oh, okay, so if a call came in and somebody left a message and we were able to capture the information enough so that it actually created the ticket under the right person, the right company, and then put the voicemail in, or even better yet, if it was about a specific ticket, they could type in the ticket number into their phone and it would attach the call directly as a note into the ticket. Simple things that create a lot of value, right? So that you're not having to constantly clean things up and like merge things together.
That's it.
Because I mean, it's just like that, right? So I think a lot of what we're talking about today is just taking the investments in the tools that you already have and getting more out of them, right? Because a lot of people, I'd say 9 out of 10 people, the phone system and the tools do not integrate.
Well, I think that's key there, making the most out of what you have. So, because I can tell you, after watching this demo, I have not been utilizing bvoip to its fullest potential. So, we even use OneStream, the OneStream client. So, I don't know if I get stuck, I'm going to reach out to you, or I'll just aggravate Alec and say, hey, I got to get some help here.
As a company that sells communications, like we do like to answer our phones.
Yeah.
I think that's like,
well, I got to say, you've always answered my call, because sometimes I don't want to email. And sometimes, I mean, God, George, you've always been accessible no matter how I reach out. So
my people think I never sleep. They may be right, but I'm just like, a lot of people get into the IT business, Scott, to help people, right? I mean, that's what we're doing. Yeah. So like, that's, because we came from that business, we've built a lot of technology and a platform out to really help that vertical of business, right? And like, I'm not saying that our stuff wouldn't work in a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, a school, whatever. And a lot of our partners go that way, right? And like they're the end customers for the MSPs that partner with bvoip, and they can help those people. And like we build, a lot of technology to help in those scenarios. But like our focal point is, how do we bring extreme value to IT service and managed service providers? And like that's who we do business with, right?
Well, I don't know another VoIP provider that's MSP focused.
There's some out there, but I think like, a lot their concentration in this area is a little bit paper thin. And like, it's like integration for the sake of saying I have integration, but it just doesn't do it.
Right.
And so that's what we do. We build out, I think in 2021,
bvoip was built up from the ground up with that 100%, in mind.
100%. Yeah. In 2021, we built out, I think, something like a little over 200 new features.
Okay.
Into like debate, like I showed you a little bit of OneStream today. A lot of those features end up there. So,
and just to be clear, the OneStream client comes free with every bvoip account.
There's a version of OneStream that comes free with every bvoip account. Now, as you need more and more functionality, some of that comes at a cost, and it's not an unreasonable cost. But hey, by the way, we also don't lock you into an agreement. If you try it and it's not for you, you can downgrade it, you can cancel it. All we ask is for 30 days notice. Like that, hopefully that shows people, hey, listen, like we're in it, right? If we do a good job and you like it, you'll stick around. And if you don't, then it's not for you. And that's okay. But I'm not going to put the 3-year contract or even a 1-year contract. How about a month to month? Like that's how we do business.
Yeah. I love it. Well, if an IT business owner is watching this event and they want to take the next step and reach out to you, George, what's the best way for them to do that?
So I set up this cool landing page, offers.bvoip.com/ITBOG.
Awesome.
So hit up this landing page, throw your information in. By the way, because you're an ITBOG member, we give you half off any activation fees at bvoip. So, hey, this is a benefit to you guys out there too. So, go to this landing page, fill out this form, tell us what your current PSA is. Maybe we'll add some more to that list. And then we're going to give you, set up a time to chat, see if our solution works for you. And hey, if it works out, and then we'll hook you up with a pretty cool deal.
That's great. Well, I don't know. I know I've been with bvoip over a year now. Time just keeps flying. Maybe it's been longer, but it's been really easy to adopt to, really easy for us to use and navigate. And like I said, we're not a power user by any means. The free OneStream client does all of our needs. So we are more than happy with the service. Highly recommend you. And I can't thank you enough. George, thanks for the time.
Appreciate you for having us on here, and guys, happy to be a part of the community, and we'll see you again later on in the year.
Sounds great. George, thanks again. I hope you have a great day.
You got it, guys.
We'll see you. Bye-bye.
Bye.